Okay, hi. So I just wanted to show you kind of how I've learned to do shadow colors on Create2. Obviously, there's different ways to do it, and I'll try to remember to show the other way that I used to do, but this is the way I do it now. All right, so over here on the right, these are my shadow layers, and of course, just like any Create2 file, there's a bunch of layers to kind of get it all set up for you. Um, all right, so just to start, if you don't know, there's the saturation, whatever hue saturation tool. It's Control U or Command U, and as usual, you use the hue to change the color itself, saturation to make it duller or more vibrant, and then lightness for light or dark. Um, when it comes to the layer color, or sorry, the layer opacity itself, you can actually, with my method, have it at all 100%, and that is definitely a nice way to do it because you won't have to worry about the opacity and, all the little settings that made it just right for you. So it kind of keeps it cleaner, I guess you could say, but it's really not necessary. You could totally have it set up a little differently, like with my layer one, I tend to have it kind of lower than the second, deepness layer. Shadow layer two is what I like to call it. And yeah, that just kind of keeps it kind of the way I like it, but it's not necessary. Okay, so shadow layer colors are really nice because when you want to make each pet color like really nice and perfect, it's a really good way to adjust those tiny details that kind of will just make it oomph for you. So, like obviously our standard way that most people learn how to do it is they'll just use straight black. And black is, never gonna quite work out, especially for each color. Though it is a great way to start building the layers when you're painting. Um, but for default, unless it's like a weird green color or something like that, the best default color I like to do is this one right here over on the right. It's called Pastel Violet Magenta. And I think, yeah, let me click on this. Yes, this is the hue or hex code color if you need it. But on Photoshop, at least, it's like the brightest purple before it turns pink over here. And that's like the default I like to really use. Um, so I like to color the whole layer with all of those just to kind of get it at a good start level. Okay, so when I go and say, look at this and think, okay, these markings could be a little bit lighter in the shadow areas here, like down here, definitely could do a lot better. Um, all I basically do is say, you go down here and you use the control key. I don't know if this is the same on other programs, but use the control key to actually select. So you control click on that layer's icon or thumbnail area, and that'll select it for you. And as long as you have the shadow layer selected and use that hue saturation tool again, control U, you will be able to manipulate it. So let's say I want to make it a little lighter, maybe saturate it a little bit and more on kind of the warm side of pink. This will give it a really nice effect, and I think while subtle, it makes all the difference. I'll just keep going here and kind of just show you as I go. So I'll select the underbelly layer, go back up to the shadow layer, and depending on how you have this set up, maybe you have this underbelly color layer as painted in the whole eye underneath. So you wouldn't actually see that and it won't matter in the final graphic, but when you're selecting this, if that was the case, you might accidentally select the eye area too, which means that you would be affecting the shadow layer when you're doing this method. So just be aware of that. And if that is the case and you want to say get rid of that selection, they have great selection tools. So I think it's Control Alt, and now you can see there's a little minus on my cursor right there. You can click on that and then you can just ensure that that color or like the eye color, for example, won't be tarnished when you're manipulating the shadow colors. Okay, so then I'll just go into that. I'm thinking it's going to be more on the blue side, and I'll desaturate a little bit because this is kind of like that cool gray color. And if you wanted, like I was kind of explaining, is the lightness and the darkness kind of acts as opacity, as you can see. So if I made it really, really light, it goes away. If I make it really, really dark, it gets super dark. And this can still be affected by the color. So if I up the saturation so you can see it, you can kind of see like, oh, it's really deep purple or really deep blue. But for this case, we'll probably not alter the lightness and we'll lower the saturation a little bit and keep it more on the blue side of color because it's a nice contrast. Okay, so if you deselect that, it's already starting to look pretty nice. I'm actually going to select that again, go to the second shadow layer because we can see we still have that purple in that deeper shadow. And I'll do ctrl+u, which is taking that last setting that you did for your hue saturation tool and being able to do it again. So that way I don't have to like pick through this each time if I know, oh, okay, I need this color to be the same kind of deepness and color. And that really helps too. There, okay, that's definitely starting to look a little bit better. Um, yeah, let's see, another technique that is really great is say I want to really dramatically change the overall red of him for the shadow colors. Well, a way you can do that is to select the base layer and then use Alt and Control to do the subtraction for each of the markings that you do not want to affect. So then I just click on each of those and you can see um, that's all deselected. So all that's being selected is that deep red. And then I'll go over to the shadow 1 layer, use my hue saturation tool again, and let's just really up this and make it really dark and say I want it to be like this weird dramatic blue. Well, there you go. And it didn't mess with any of all that work that you did for all those other, color areas. And as you can see over here on the right, all we're doing is manipulating the brightness, the hue of these select areas on this one shadow layer, which makes it really easy because these files can get so crazy with layers and it can be really easy to get lost, especially if you have to go back and fix something. So that's definitely a plus to this method. I also feel like you get a little bit more control over it versus using this other method that I'll just show you really quick. Um, just because when you've got a bunch of different shadow layers going throughout the file, then it's being affected by every little change that you make possibly on another layer. So that can be kind of annoying. Okay, so I'm just going to use that purple color and paint over all this again. Okay, so the other method, which can definitely be great, it's great especially if you don't feel like doing that and you just kind of want to get it done real fast. So let's just say I want to make, I guess, just this um, gray, kind of underbelly stuff a little bit darker. I can actually use Control and Alt to select, and as you can see, duplicate the layer. I mean, obviously, do it however you'd like, but duplicate the shadow layer, drag it over to the base layer, and then use the clipping selection to clip that to the layer. That way it's not affecting any of the other marking layers right there. And yeah, you can just make it however you need to. We'll just call that kind of cool or whatever. And yeah, this, like I said, is nice, but sometimes that can be really annoying, especially if, say, I go back up here and then change this for thinking specifically that I'm altering only the look of something else. Well, probably not true. It's probably going to alter the other stuff since that's part of it. So that can get a little confusing. But it's definitely a way to do it, and it's not a wrong way to do it. So just do whatever's comfortable for you. And yeah, I think that's it for covering this. Let me know if you have any questions.